Okay. And then Shay's husband, ex-husband Jack, complications due to hernia operation. Yeah. And then Kim Foley, hiking. I got to go hiking for the first time with my granddaughter yesterday. And then Kathy and Steve had a house. I can't even spell house. There we go. Closing of Steve's sister in Florida, which is a removal of burden.
Because it's your first time hiking?
Yeah.
Or the first time hiking?
With my granddaughter. Yeah. First time hiking with my down at Arc City. If you haven't been down there, it's a pretty easy hike. You get to hike down to the river. It's only 45 minutes from here. So on a nice day, I would recommend go for a walk. It's not even really hiking. Other praises and petitions.
I guess we could do a praise for my mom. She is out of the hospital, out of rehab, and she's now in her new care home. And she likes it. Making great.
How old is your mom?
82.
All right.
And she said she's one of the younger women there.
Oh, I would imagine that she's below the average. DW.
My sister is very much.
Okay.
Better.
Okay.
We think anyway.
Okay.
Sister will be transferred to Catholic.
Whoop.
She's on Wednesday. That's what Charlie's off.
Is that out over on the west side? Okay. Okay.
Danny Stewart.
Yeah. Oh. Okay.
And I got
Uh-huh.
one, I'm calling it a praise.
Okay.
Our oldest daughter is going back to Washington to live with her mother.
Okay. And what's her first name? Aaron. Spell Aaron for me.
Orion.
I wouldn't even close. Aron, Aaronerin.
That's a really good thing.
Okay. Good. Patrice? You need to go to the other marriage class. Aaron, Jill's daughter, is going to go live with her mother. It was a good thing that happened. Other praises or petitions. What happened to the front row?
You were scared.
You don't know how true that could be. I thought that was a real comment. At least I wasn't eating at the time. Other praises or we'll come over here. Yeah. Any other praises and petitions this morning?
Tim is here. He's better.
Oh, hi, Tim.
I had COVID. It's because I meet on Wednesday mornings with a bunch of other curmudgeons, and they want to hold hands and we pray. At HC, it had COVID a week earlier.
Oh. Well, Kathy's not even here. Any others? Well, since DW likes to talk in class, would you lead us in prayer this morning? Whoop. Uh-huh.
house place?
The Micases. Yeah, they're moving to Florida. Their house close.
Thank you for the date. Excuse me, for letting me do this. Come and worship you and to start our new week. Let's see. Thankful and pray we'll never take that for granted and we'll always be in a worshipful mood. Have the people in our congregation who need your healing power and touch. We pray for Dave Merkel. We pray for James Hudson Pratt. Health issues. Give them healing that they need. Yes, comfort for Danny Stewart. Lost his wife now and lost Josh not long ago, and so the pain that he's going through is sure hard, and please help him to see you in all of this trial and storm. Keep his eyes on you. Thank you that have some good things to thank you for. John wants to thank you. We got to go back to Bella. Stephen, Kathy, that house that closed and worked well for them. Steve's mom is in a new facility, and Trevor and Charlie are also in good places to take care of them. And they're getting better. So lots of good things to praise you for. I'm sure there's 1,000 things more that we can thank you for. We give you all the praise for that. You, John, and us today. Help us to know what you want us to learn as we talk about these things in Jesus' name.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, I think there may be some newbies. This class is regarding the words of Jesus, but to learn the intent, DW.
All right. Helping Aaron and Tim.
Scott.
Tell me Buffalo.
Yeah.
You're looking at that quarter, that otherwise
Anyway, the purpose of this class is to learn the words of Jesus. And we learn what the words of Jesus means by doing a survey of what the Old Testament and New Testament writers were talking about at the time, that Jesus was really reiterating things from the Old Testament, and the New Testament writers were confirming what Jesus had said. In this, and we're starting now with Matthew 5, well, we started last week with Matthew 5:27-28. You've heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. We asked the questions last week is, why is marriage and adultery so important to God and Jesus? The words from Matthew 5:27 were directly from the Old Testament. As you remember, it comes from the Ten Commandments. And so then the next step we did is we began answering these questions by examining marriage and adultery in the Old Testament. And we divided the Old Testament into three parts. First one was adultery violates a God-ordained covenant. We're spending a lot of time on this. We spent last week, we'll spend this week, and we're going to spend the following week on this. Because it's very important that as Christians, that we understand that it is a God-ordained thing. Because the world does not want you to believe it's God-ordained. They want to believe it's just the culture that has to do with that. The next section, adultery threatened Israel's social structure. What we'll learn in the next couple of weeks on that one is, yes, it was very much important to the social structure, but it wasn't culturally ordained or culturally given, as some people would like to think, to control people. It's following what God's plan was or is. And then the last one, adultery. as a spiritual metaphor. The first verses that we looked at in the Old Testament last week was Genesis 2:22-24, where God designed matrimony, defined marriage, how it was created. This was the beginning in Genesis. This passage affirms that marriage is a covenant established by God, not a cultural or human invention, and serves as his divinely ordained pattern for the relationship between man, woman, and God. We're going to look at today we're going to look at Proverbs 2:16-19, but to get a sense of where these verses are coming from, I'm actually going to start in Proverbs 2:11. The writer of Proverbs wrote in 2:11, "Discretion will guard you, understanding will watch over you." Would anybody like to take Proverbs 2:16-19, read that for the class? Okay, we're going to read it.
Be delivered from the forbidden woman, from the adulteress with her smooth words, who forsakes the companion of her youth, and forgets the covenant of her God. For her house sinks down to earth, and her paths to the departed. None who go to her come back, nor do they regain the paths of life.
Thank you. I believe that this is the first time the Bible uses the word covenant regarding marriage. Also, we see companion of your youth. That's a common term when we talk about adultery and marriage in the Bible. It's also used in Proverbs 5:18. So who wrote the book of Proverbs? Solomon, yeah. Generally attributed to Solomon. It says that in Proverbs 1:1. Well, the book contains material collected and edited over time. Chapters 1-9 specifically, including Proverbs 2:16-19, is widely understood to reflect the wisdom from Solomon, either written by Solomon himself or faithfully preserved from his instruction. And boy, I apologize, my tongue isn't working this morning. So when was Proverbs written? If not specific time, what was going on at the time that Proverbs was written?
Israel was at their highest point that they ever were as a country. The country was at swell, and they were at peace, and everything was good, because up to that point, after David and all, they were following God.
Okay, very good. The approximate date for the writings of Solomon was around 970 to 930 BC, or the 10th century BC. Of course, as we were talked about, it corresponds to Solomon's reign over Israel, marked by peace, prosperity, and a flourishing of wisdom literature, as Paul had explained with that. So what was the purpose of Proverbs? Okay, very good. All right, we'll just go with that, Jill. Yeah, chapter 1-9 is a collection of father to son teachings, emphasizing that the path of wisdom leads to life, peace, and God's favor. The path of folly leads to destruction and regret. In Proverbs 2:16-19, wisdom is pictured as something that protects a person from the immoral woman. But should this wisdom also be taught to our daughters? Yeah, this is wisdom that should be shared with all of them, because there might be a few sly men out there. We're very few, but there may be one or two. All right. Okay. in Proverbs 2:16 through 19, we're going to break that down. Adultery is portrayed as deception. The adulteress flatters with her words, appealing to emotion than to truth. Marriage is identified as a covenant, not merely a relationship. She forgets the covenant of God, showing that adultery is a spiritual violation before it is a moral one. And faithfulness involves abandonment. She leaves the companion of her youth, emphasizing betrayal of a long-standing God-ordained bond. Sin has a trajectory. The passage traces a clear path: temptation, abandonment, and spiritual death. And when we get to Matthew 5:28, we'll do some more clarification of that. We should get to that by February or so. Adultery leads away from life, not fulfillment. None who go to her return again underscores lasting consequences and spiritual damage. So how do verses 18 through 19 portray adultery as a path rather than a single act? Is adultery something that just happens?
Starts with flattery on her part.
Yeah, according to the Proverbs. So it's not just instantaneous, is there?
Or like flirting, say in an office or something.
It gets one to thinking about it. Okay. So what does this passage teach about the long-term spiritual cost of abandoning God's design for marriage? Death.
Like the first chapter in James,
Mhm.
about how that temptation leads to death.
Okay.
It says none who go to her return.
Yeah, when I was going over this study with Mary Lee, she kind of like, wow, none who go to her return again. So from what we've learned from other scripture, is there a way to recover from adultery?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there is.
And the adulterous woman in Proverbs is representative of all folly. And so if you choose folly when in rebellion to God, that's when, if you continue down that path, that's when you can eventually reach that point of going to God.
Okay. So why do you think Solomon used such strong words then? It's serious. Yeah, thank you. Absolutely serious. We don't want to say maybe not return, then what? If you're teaching a child and you go, this might happen, what's their response? Yeah. Well, if it's a maybe, what are the odds, right? Yeah, so I think the writer was using such strong words because they wanted to emphasize how deep this issue can become and what the destruction
Well, the
Can
word
be.
could certainly be permanent
hmm
from an adulterous situation. So you might be able to turn your life around, but what have you done to others?
Okay. All right.
Even if you and your spouse recover from it, it's still there. I mean, we need to get past, but it's always kind of there in the back of your mind.
So what is the act that allows a couple not to be a forever couple? Adultery, basically, because it's such a deep one that maybe you can't recover from that. Scott?
Remember also Hosea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so remember Hosea, that there can be recovery from
Mhm.
this. Because remember, God made Hosea take Gomer back, or he told him to take him back. And it's like God reaches out to us, even though we're unfaithful. Jesus says, if you look at a woman and lust after her, you committed adultery with her in your heart. So it's that righteousness and turning to God that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
the
much
effects are
so.
Really bad. You know, the effects of sin, all sin, are really bad, and they hurt us and they hurt everybody else. But you know, it's not like you can ever come back from it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think her too is in the fact that it also sets a reflection where you caused a brother or sister to sin, and you don't look very highly on that.
No. No. Yeah, you don't want to lead to someone else into sin. Well, what about the one body concept? One flesh, one body, that the marriage covenant is established. I think one of the things regarding sin that accentuates this, if that's the proper word, is that I think the Lord hates it when we do something that destroys our body, either actually or figuratively, with that. And that he's established his laws to make us recognize that I'm not doing this because I'm this ruler up there that just wants to tell you what to do all the time. I'm trying to control you. I think God defines sin so we know what can hurt our body. You know, we're basically ignorant people, right? So we need to be told what is good and what is bad. So God identifies this thing. And this is the whole thing about the covenant. This is really important that these things are realized.
And if there's not a covenant, then there's not a marriage, and all that bond is not there. Is that correct? If you were to live with someone and you never got married, do you still become one?
Nah, hey, anybody else want to hop on that one?
Not through God's law.
Not through God's law, not biblically. And if we're, I'm sorry? Covenant is critical.
But it lacks that commitment. The covenant. I don't see in scripture how that can be honored.
What if the people consider themselves married?
So is a covenant relationship established with God if you go, I feel like we're married?
Like the United States or whatever it is.
Well, there's a difference between,
Find someone else's name.
there's a thing called common law marriage. Okay. So, I mean, one of the thoughts may be, if you're not married in a church, is it not God ordained? If it's not led by a preacher, is it not God ordained? When Josh and Katie got married in front of a judge, we were thankful. Now, is it a God ordained marriage? Well, that's God, between God, Katie, and Josh. Oh, it's hard to say. Marilee, you've been holding your hand up?
Married and become one flesh. That also extends to when they have child. They're one flesh. They're both mom and dad. And adultery is so harmful to the children. And it's awful for them. They always say children are resilient. It's like, I don't know.
We'll start with,
Two parts to it, the physical and then the emotional and soul part. And I think that's why that's something that you look upon somebody from that one. Because I've lived a long time, I've heard a lot of things. And the physical part it seems like to me what I was hearing was more forgivable than the emotional. You know, in other words, that covenant. And a covenant is not physical, right?
you're correct.
Yeah, both of those are very important. But sometimes the is more devastating for the heart and covenant part than the physical part. I don't know, but that's what I've come to understand. So it's really, it's more than just one part.
Thank you.
I have a friend who, this was a very difficult topic, but she'd been married for several years, and she and her husband went on a medical trip that she had to stay home. While he was gone, he was taken advantage of, and there ended up being a child, which is not something you really ever hear about happening. But it took years for them to get past that. It did, thankfully, but it took years. And that's something where there's not an emotional connection, just a physical thing. But it's a very slippery slope.
Very much so. Patrice? Did God create Eve for Adam? There-
What we think of as being married,
Well,
they
the church
think of married
building.
because God said they were married. He created her for him. They were the first.
Well, we can describe what was biblical and what we would think would be, but I suspect that God made Eve specifically for Adam, and Adam accepted him as his companion. And her. Thank you for pointing that out.
We all knew what you meant.
Yeah. That's fine. This is what this class is for. And so I would think, yes, Adam and Eve was married because this was the establishment of what marriage was supposed to be, even though the word marriage was not involved in the biblical text. Wait a minute, Steve. Hold on. We'll come back.
This sort of something I've been thinking about, that it seems that God allowed things to be different for the Israelites. Or early on, the things evolved, like the scriptures in Proverbs kind of talks about the adulteress, focuses on the woman, the female side of it. And when you think of Solomon and all of his wives, his sisters, God appeared to look the other way or something. I don't quite understand it. And then the scripture in Matthew is specifically with man looks upon women. So it's like God, Jesus is saying, hey, we may have allowed some stuff in the back past that isn't really right, but if we allowed it, we're not anymore. I mean, we're wanting to make it clear. Am I having the right?
Yeah. Please be here next week. Because next week we're going to talk about God's ordained marriage in the New Testament, and then we're going to roll into polygamy. I had the question asked, one man, one woman, how did we get to polygamy, and how did God say that was okay? Well, let's find out next week if God really said it was okay. Yeah.
Also, too, could Proverbs be written from Solomon because of experience?
Yeah, well, very much so.
Well, back to Patrice's question, too. There was no such thing when Adam and Eve were created as marriage. Because there was no, right. Those things did not come about that was shared until Moses.
That I don't know, but I have to study that. But I would say in the garden that even though there wasn't a human pastor to bless this marriage, I think there was a God one. Yeah. Steve, then the Paul.
What you just said, they had access to God in the garden, which we do not today.
Yeah.
So, big difference.
A little bit of difference. Paul?
Think about also Adam and Eve were one before they.
Oh, that's
Because that Eve
Yeah.
was taken out of.
Adam, yeah. Yeah. Very good. My wife will start squirming, but I tell people that I've been married for 43 years as the most happiest 41 years of my life. Yeah, they were a little rough. And I'm just speaking for myself. I came from a rough childhood, and I swore if I got married and if it wasn't good, I was gone. Okay. But because of her strength in God and my coming of strength in God, we stuck it out. And the last 41 years have been a most blessed marriage because we trusted God. We weren't going to give up our marriage because of how we felt about each other, because God said that we are married, and that's the way it is, and we stuck it out, and it has turned out very much so. Oh, she's got a comment. Oh. No. No, if we would have lived together first, after 6 months, I'd been like, we're out of here. Yeah. She was perfect. I was an imperfect vessel. Patrice. All right. Well, we really do. All right. Any other comments before we move on?
God is. And unfortunately, many from it is not taken seriously. It was so many times, well, we'll get married, but if it doesn't work out, we'll fix it more. That's not God's plan.
No.
And if we have a commitment and a covenant, covenants are serious.
Well, when I started looking at the passages that we're going to be covered, one of my comments to class is we got to be really sensitive to some of the things that we're going to talk about, because later on we're going to talk about divorce and these other things. So I understand for those that have been married more than once, I don't know why, stuff happens. But in culture today, someone termed the phrase, we seem to have a culture of serial monogamy, right? I get married to one, and I get married to another, and I get married to another one, married to another one. And is that part of God's plan? Not according to Proverbs, anyway.
But doesn't it also say in Proverbs, I can't remember which verse it is, that if a woman was to marry a man and they didn't like each other, they separated, and she got with another man, and then another man, and she could not go back to the first man for some reason.
I don't know. Anybody else? I'm not on top of that verse.
That's the Old Testament. I don't know that I don't think it's in Proverbs, but it talks about how that is an abomination for the return, because the additional covenant already gets in place, and it's going to try to go back to the original. It was described as an abomination.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Carrying on. Sure, DW.
So I got a tough question. So, if a man and a woman, between the two of them, make a covenant that we are married, they've not had, there's no piece of paper, there's no witnesses, there are no witnesses. But they made a covenant between the two of them and between God.
Okay.
What God is their lives. Are they married? According to the state of Kansas, they are.
Okay. But there's a difference between laws and morality, and God's based morality.
One of the difficult things is that there's no detailed description of what constitutes a marriage, the formality of it in the Bible. It's pretty defined.
Okay.
That's a tough question.
But there's 3 participants, right? And I'm going to get to Scott here in just a second. And we don't know what in people's hearts are, right? So when 2 people, we know what their hearts are regarding the third person. So it's hard for us to judge if they're married or not, is the only thing that I would comment on.
And I'll say that that's not what the elders want to see. But that's a question that we wrestle with.
Yeah. Scott?
I was just gonna say about that, you know what? If you've made a commitment between you and your wife and you, and God is right there, then to me, I think you're married. You know, it doesn't, we could do it out in the forest, you know, or at the Arboretum or something like that. But I think you better make sure you tell everybody you know, we're married. We're married before God, because when you don't do that, what you do is you end up, everybody's like, well, are they just living together? You know, are they living in sin? You remember the woman, the Samaritan woman that had 5 husbands? Well, she had 5 husbands, and the one that she was living with was not
Not her
even
husband.
Jesus pointed that out, that, hey, they were living together, but they did not have a commitment before God, and they were not married. So, you know, I think it's really important to the body of people that you know that if you're going to do this, that you need to let them know. We're married. We're committed to each other. We have a covenant between each other, us and God.
Very good. Because they're setting an example, and the younger people will be looking at it. And the parents can explain.
Are we just going to all live together or what? And it's like, no, we are married.
Karen?
And if that couple choose to separate, wouldn't they have to have a certificate of divorce, like they talk about? Well,
That's a state issue. I don't know.
I mean, you know, we require, God talked about that, of having a certificate of divorce.
Oh, well, yeah, that's an Old Testament thing.
Yeah.
And
So there's that.
we're gonna talk about that in a little bit. And you know, the reason why divorce was allowed in the Old Testament was because we are weak vessels, right? DW?
Yeah. We feel the other thing that one of the important things is if you have this covenant that's been made out in the forest, so to speak, that you let the government know too. Because we have people that say, yeah, we're married, but basically we haven't told the government. And that can be for a lot of different reasons. From, you know, tax reasons, healthcare reasons, all kinds of issues. But when you start playing, yeah, we're married, but no, we're not going to let the government know. That's the problem.
Yeah, if you're ashamed of being married or it's secretive, then where have you gotten?
Law and God's morality, things like that. State law and national law is not always going to be synonymous with God will. Like for instance, state law says a man and a man or a woman and a woman to be married. Just because state law says this is right does not necessarily make it right.
It's certainly not biblical. Peggy?
Thinking if they want to be called married, and do they make that covenant before they have sex, before they live together? Because if they don't make that covenant right at the beginning, I think they have sinned because they're not married yet until they live together, whatever the law says. But they have already gone against God because they weren't married.
Correct.
They want to say, okay, we're going to be husband and wife before they even sleep together.
But can that, okay, so of course, if you're not married and you have sex with another person, then you have committed sin, biblical sin. You committed sin against God. But can that be forgiven when that marriage covenant is established? Yeah. But can it affect the marriage? Can it affect the marriage? Yeah, it can affect the marriage. Sue?
My mother, when she got married, her mom was very upset with her that she did not have children. Because they're Indian, and Indians just don't get married like that. I mean, for you now, I guess. But when my grandmother was, she had three husbands, and but they're all brothers, and they have the same last name her. But mom and dad were buried in the courthouse, and she, I don't know why my grandmother, well, because of the Indian. the way they do their things. But I don't think he's doing much now, but way back then they did.
Okay. When culture conflicts with biblical teachings, what's right and what's wrong? God's right is the right way. And we have to be careful with the culture that we're involved in with that. I would ask, was your mom a Christian? Yeah. Yeah, she was probably going by what the Native American culture was at that time. And we're going to end that on that discussion right there. Michael, did you have something else? Okay. I thought I saw the hand to go. Okay, so is there a difference, and this is kind of what we've gone back with DW, is there a difference between a spiritual violation and a moral one? How would we look at the two separately, as the same or different? Any thoughts? In the first bell?
I don't think they're the same.
Okay. Other comments?
I think it's woven together like a rope. You have so many threads. It's all together. They're not necessarily the same, but they make the same rope.
Yeah, they're twined together. The way I would look at it is that a spiritual violation is between me and God. If I commit adultery, I have violated the covenant between me and God. A moral violation would be I broke a covenant between my wife and I. So moral is more humanistic, spiritual is between God and each other. Okay, so how does wisdom function as protection for marriage in this text? Scott?
It irritates me always that Solomon wrote all this and then had the
Wow.
wives. Okay, so, it's true understanding what wisdom is and the covenant, but living it each day and going over and over and over and so you don't stray off. That is so important, because Solomon lived a very sinful life, especially at the end of his life, and everybody suffered because of it. So,
He wrote this earlier.
Yeah.
yeah, maybe he did, but I tell you what, he sure didn't follow it.
Well,
And that irritates me.
yeah, and Jill brought up is that maybe he was writing these things from the lessons he's learned. But continue on Scott's thoughts is like David was a man of God's heart. I told my brother in Bible study the other day, you can be forgiven because David did a heck of a lot of worse things than I ever did. And then you got Solomon, wisdom, having 1,000 wives. Whew. Wow, that's how much wisdom is that? Yeah, that's sin is a sin.
We rate things and then we go, but then anything sexual or whatever, oh man, we don't talk about it. But in God's eyes, a sin is a sin.
Well, I would agree to a certain extent, and to that, other than sin against one's body, God's creation. You can sin against somebody else, but when you sin against God's creation, I would take that a little bit more seriously. I think God would. But that would be a personal opinion. Not a reflection of what the church believes, but that would be my own thing. But yeah, you don't want to sin of any type, but the sin against the body.
We look at people like, oh, well, I'm better than that because I didn't do that. I didn't kill anybody.
Yeah.
I'm not running around somebody's wife. I'm not.
Sounds like a Pharisee.
Yeah, well, there was an example of that, very much
A
so.
lot of people compare themselves.
Yeah.
So I'm not.
At least I didn't do that.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, the bell just rang, and Malachi teaches things a little bit different than Proverbs. Each one of these 3 verses that we picked out for this discussion have some different things that are involved in it. So I guess next week we'll start with Malachi and get on to the New Testament. So anything else before we disperse? I want to thank everyone for coming today. I think the discussion was great. I appreciate you all making comments. Never hesitate to make a comment. In a seminar once, I heard that there's not any stupid questions. Yeah, actually there are, but don't worry about it. Yeah, ask the question anyway.
Maybe stupid.
Yeah.
That's pretty snarky.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Oak Island, is it?
Pardon?
What Oak Island is it?
Oak Island?
Oak Island. That's
Oak
where they're
Island.
digging for treasure.
Oh, I don't know. I don't even know anything about Oak Island. What is it?
Back in the 60s,